Hello and welcome to this week's episode of That Real Estate Tech Guy. This week I'm joined by my friend Joe Evangelisti, who is got a great story. He's both investor as well as created a phenomenal coaching program and a coaching program with a little difference. So Joe comes at it from a really cool background because Joe comes from a construction background himself, and so like most of the guys I interview who are, who started in fix and flipping, they don't have construction backgrounds. And so I've always thought to myself, how do you do fix and flipping when you don't have a construction background? But they all do it. Well, Joe's a little different because he had a construction background. He has a great journey, and he talks us through kind of how he had, whereas most people have I think most people transition and develop knowledge about construction if they do it. He went the other way. I've got the knowledge of that. I have to learn the business side. I have to learn the investment side. I have to learn the relationship side. And that's a cool journey. It's a little different take than normal. And I think you're going to enjoy that. And then the other thing that I thought was really cool is his coaching program itself, where unlike a lot of coaching programs that are sort of trying to teach you how and then kind of the basics like wholesaling, whatever it is, he's sort of come to the point where he's developed a program for people who are already maybe doing wholesaling or fix and flipping or whatever, and to learn how to add on. So be additive to the existing business, add on some of the commercial opportunities that he has, and that he works on where the money stacks up even better. And some of the opportunities you have are even better, both from an income point of view and a tax point of view. So that was a really two really valuable elements of this episode, something that makes Joe a little unique as well. So I'll shut up and let you dive right into my conversation with Joe Evangelisti. And I'm here live with my friend Joe Evangelisti. Joe, welcome to the podcast. Do me a favor and give everybody a little bit about who you are and what you're currently involved in.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for having me on the call, on the podcast as well. It's good to be here. Yeah, my name is Joe Evangelisti. I've really, I always tell people I was the son of a construction guy turned general contractor, and so I've been in construction my whole life. Out of the high school, I went into the military for a few years and did construction there as well. I was in the US Navy Seabees. A lot of people don't even know what the Seabees were, but they're the construction battalions of the Navy. So got blessed and grateful to spend 6 years, going all over the world and building all kinds of cool stuff. And then inevitably, shifted right into real estate after the military and started flipping houses. And arguably the best time ever to learn how to cut your teeth in real estate, 2007. Did a couple flips and turned into a landlord, and ever since then it's been all downhill. I've done just about most things I think you can do in real estate. But in a brokerage business, I've done wholesale, I've done commercial development, I've done office buildings, you name it. So it's come full circle.
Well, you are not unsurprisingly, you are not the first veteran that I've had on this podcast. It seems like real estate in general has an enormous amount of military veterans working in it. In fact, I think of the last few podcast guests I've had at least 2 Marines. And there feels like a disproportionate amount of people, but I guess that's also probably, there's a reason for that, right? I mean, I think there's an element of repeatable process that good, strong real estate businesses do that the military kind of folks that I've met seem to gravitate towards. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's definitely a really good baseline for discipline in business and life in general. And it taught me a lot about who I am as a person, as a leader, and what I'm capable of, and the stick to itiveness and problem solving are definitely big pieces of how the military is put together.
Fantastic. Now, you also, I mean, not only do you have a real, your own real estate business, but you also have created the Legacy Builder Real Estate Academy. So I want to do this in 2 parts. I want to start off with a bit about your real estate business, your journey. You've been going for well, right before the 2008 crash. Let's start on that, and then we'll transition over to your real estate academy, because I'm fascinated to find out a bit more about that. In terms of your own journey, I mean, that's a long history. 2007, that you've been in the game for quite a while. One of the things I always am fascinated for when I speak with people who have been in the game for a while, and it goes to the nature of this podcast, is there's been a huge leap in technology in terms of real estate over, and if you've been going since 2007, that's a lot of leaps that we've made. So can you give me a little sense about some of the ways that the real estate technology journey has kind of fit in with your own journey for the different types of real estate you do?
Yeah, it's funny. As soon as you said that, you know where my mind went? I had a mentor when I first got into business, and he used to say, if you can't make 100 grand a month in real estate with a pen, a notepad, and a cell phone, like you don't belong doing it, right? So I've been using that phrase for 20 years. I really do. I believe it's true. Like if you can't be resourceful enough without technology, then technology is going to amplify your weaknesses. But if you can be successful first, then I think there's a lot of good technology that you can bolt on to a successful business to create better systems and process and flow. Um, and, I'm sure everyone's talking about today is AI, right? So I think, we use Claude and we use Gemini a lot in underwriting real estate deals and trying to understand entitlements and permit phases and is zoning going to be approved and, is there, wetlands nearby and all that type of stuff. And we're talking about like commercial development. So yeah, I think what technology has done is it's made the important things much, much faster. But I still feel like you need to understand the important things first, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I think when I look at a lot of the real estate, or when I look at what a good business needs nowadays, technology really isn't an optional add-on. It's a foundational one. But even something as simple as making sure that the leads that you have at the moment are being actually worked and you're not losing them behind. I mean, even something as simple as a CRM over the last 20 years has evolved immensely. Like, I'm not so sure someone starting out today would ever even consider the pen and the paper.
You might not be wrong about that. That's again, it's just it's kind of a baseline trick that I start out with my coaching students is learn how to get it right first and learn how to talk to people and ask the right questions. But you're not wrong there. I mean, you have to cultivate the leads. You have to be in front of them constantly. A lead that sits for more than a certain amount of time is going to just go rotten and stale, and someone else is going to get to it. So, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of that has to happen on the front side of things. I think you still need to learn how to close and how to sell as well.
And when you started, I mean, if you think back to when you first started in real estate, and obviously you've done a lot of different parts of real estate, what were some of the key what were some of the key things you had to learn when you first started when you first started in the real estate journey? Obviously, you had a background in construction, which would have helped enormously. Particularly if you're flipping houses. I mean, that would be a huge bonus because you'd actually be able to look at a property and go, wait a second, that doesn't look structurally sound.
Yeah.
But that has very little to do with sales. That has very little to do with some of the skills of actually buying the house. So what did you find were the biggest kind of lessons you had to learn when you got into real estate, given you had the construction background, but not the sales one?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a great question because, like, when I got in, I was hyper confident, as you can imagine, in the construction aspect of things. Like, I'm like, I could build anything. There's nothing that in break that I can't fix. There's, we're going to work it out, because, again, the Seabees have this motto of can do. And they have a really cool phrase that says, the difficult we do it once, the impossible takes a little longer, right? So I've always had this, like, I could run through brick walls mentality. But I was really, frankly, at the beginning, real estate stupid. And what I mean by that is everything else you said, right? I didn't understand contracts. I didn't understand mortgage. I didn't understand banking. I didn't understand tenants. And so I learned so much in my first 18 months, and I'm still learning to this day. I learn every day. But in the first 18 months, it was like drinking through a fire hose, right? We bought 2 flip houses. We bought them the traditional way. We put down 25%. I had a mentor at the time who came in and bought into equity. And sometime in that phrase of flipping those first 2 houses, the market started really softening. Like, it crashed in the middle of '08, but like a lot of people don't realize it was crashing for 12 months before '08, right? It was just coming down. And so, the houses we thought we were going to flip for 320 grand were worth 300 grand, 275. Next thing you know, I'm in at my basis and I'm like, now what do I do? Do I literally, and when I say my basis, I mean, if I sold at that level, I would have lost all my cash injection. And that at that time, that was my entire life savings. I was 6 years of being in the military, deploying, saved up to buy that first two houses. And so the immediacy was, and I should have led with this. I want to be a fix and flipper, right? I just want to flip houses and get rich, right? And so I didn't want to be a landlord. I didn't want to deal with tenants. I didn't want to learn that side of the process. And so I was immediately forced into, okay, what are my options? And learning how to course correct, which was probably, the most important thing in real estate is like, you always got to figure out what's your second exit, what's your third exit. So we put tenants in place. We recapped the deal. We were lucky enough to beg the bank to give us long-term financing on the deal. And that's the only thing that saved our bacon, but I didn't get that money back for years after those deals. So then I had to really start getting creative and say, okay, well, how do I do more deals without injecting my own money? Right. And then we get into the whole OPM and private lenders. And that's when the short sale boom happened. And, everything kind of took off after that.
Well, and that's an interesting, I think it's probably it'd be interesting to see, like, when I think about real estate investors who started over the last 5 years, say, I would say most of them are taught very early on to not use their own money.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, it's almost that whether you're doing
Status quo. Yeah.
right now it's kind of table stakes to assume you're using someone else's money, in whatever variety that is, right? Whether if you're either you're wholesaling it and you're literally just kind of I mean you're putting the deposit down, maybe but it's usually $1,000 or something. I mean on a wholesale deal, or you're going to be using some sort of creative finance or or hard money loan, whatever it is. Um, but in when you started, I guess that was very different. But that would lead you to your point, you'd have to very quickly learn new things, or you are not going to survive. Like at that point, what was so? If you think back to kind of the first level of pivoting you did, um what was your first, having done those deals, having at least been saved from losing everything, even if it did take a while to get the money back, what were the immediate first next type of steps you did in terms of deal structures? Where did your mind go after that? Because obviously putting down 25% yourself
Yeah.
was no longer possible.
Yeah. 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 I started asking around, like, where's the private money live? Who's got private money? Who's in this business? Who's connected? And I originally got connected with a really high level tax lien specialist that was in my area. He bought most of the tax liens in New Jersey. And he said, you got to meet this guy, Dave. Like, this guy's giving me tons of money. I'm sure he'll give you some money. So I met with Dave, and um, at first, I learned a valuable lesson with Dave, which is this, and I love to share this. If you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money, right? And so I initially asked him for money, and he spent 2 months giving me the dog and pony show, trying to give me advice. Well, let me connect you with this bank, and let me talk to this guy. Let me see if this works. And finally, after a lot of that stuff didn't pan out, I had a short sale deal that I knew was going to be a terrific deal. I knew it had high margins, and unlike a lot of the stuff today, I mean, it really did have high margins, and we were buying it at a really deep discount. And so I said to Dave, "Look, I got this deal. I have to close in 2 weeks. Do you know anybody who would take this deal down?" And so he gave me what I would consider like a predatory loan, right? He said, "Look, I'll give you a loan at 18% interest, and I want 25% of the profit." And we said we would deliver the house in 90 days. We bought, built, fixed, and flipped and sold that house in like 84 days. And so what happened was the day after closing, he comes to lunch, and he hands me a check for $5,000. And he said, "Look, I really feel bad. I made too much money off of you on this first deal. I want to give you some money back." And this is, keep in mind, I'm broke. Like, I just did my first deal, right? I ripped the check up and I handed it back to him. And I said, "That wasn't the deal. This is what we agreed to. You deserve what you deserve, and we'll keep doing these." And at that point, he said to me, "Joe, I don't want to be in your pocket anymore. Let's just do 18%. I won't take any profit." And we probably did 4 or 5 deals, and then it went down to 16, and then I went down to 14. And effectively, at some point, I had $8 million of Dave's money at 9% flat, and that's how we built it up. Right? We just slowly grow and learn to kind of trust each other, and things were good. We went from 10 deals our first year, 15, 25. We were doing 60, 80 deals a year by the time we were done.
What I like about that is, um and I don't know, God, I don't know how you'll know better than me by far about how applicable it is now. But I mean, you know, building up momentum matters. Yeah, in a lot, like I think there's a lot of times people. Well, I think one of the challenges of the social media age is everybody looks at like the guy on the Instagram, and it's like, man, like like here's me in my private jet and the blah 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 and all the yada yada yada, like all that crap, and they just assume that and I did it all with someone else's money, so they just assume then that it's really easy to get someone else's someone else's money, and it's not easy unless you have a pedigree of performance. Performance gets money. If you're a first time person who has no experience and you're not getting any money, and if you do get money, it is going to be at a very high cost. And I think that's a really nice illustration of the way people build up credibility and ability to do more action.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Jordan. I mean, look, I think that I say this to new students all the time as well, is like give away whatever you have to give away for those first couple deals. Like build a resume. When you go back to even the hard money lenders, the biggest ones in the country want to know you did 2 or 3 deals in the last 12 months. Do those 2 or 3 deals at whatever cost, just so you can say, I did these 2 or 3 deals. Now my money factor is gonna start to get much, much better, and I'm gonna start to have access. And so, I got lucky. I did one at an extreme discount, and I was able to start kind of crawl my way out of that hole. But you got to realize when I did that first money loan, I probably flipped 5 houses by then, in other various ways. So I already had a little bit of a track record for him to take a risk on me.
Yeah, and I think it also gives you there's learning curves to everything, and real estate is no different. And if you move, like, my view is always, if you move way too fast at the beginning before you know some things, your chances of setting yourself up on a table that is very very unsupported is pretty high. And that, your story also illustrates this idea of moving forward with intention and sort of building momentum as opposed to trying to hit the ground running at 100 miles per hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Now during your, you mentioned quite a lot of different bits of real estate you've been in, but I want to zero in on your construction background for a second. And the reason I do is, you know, the markets change all the time. And it's not universal. A market, this market is different from this market, different, different parts of the country, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but we're in a position now in 2026 where we have had a glut of good fortune over the last decade, and a glut to the point where you could almost not fuck a fix and flip up. Like, you had to work hard to do it wrong for a long time.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true in a lot of markets now. Um, so when you think about flipping, for instance, which I know is only one of the areas you've been in, what are some of the key lessons? Whether either you teach them or you learned, particularly in a market that we have right now that is fluctuating. That's not where the you can't make mistakes and just have and have them being kind of made up for by the amazing amount of money you're going to make. What are some of the core bits of foundational kind of activity that you think people should be looking at if they're getting on their journey of flipping right now? What are the things they should be focused on that are the fundamentals, so to speak?
Now, I'm sorry to interrupt this amazing conversation, but I wanted to make sure you knew that SmrtPhone, the only phone system built for real estate investors, connects to the best-in-class real estate investing CRMs. And because, as it's my show and I am co-founder and chairman of SmrtPhone, I got some great deals for you. Click the link and take advantage of 5,000 minutes free calling with SmrtPhone, the only phone system built for real estate investors. Click and call. Close more leads. Back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think fundamentally, you have to be a great relationship builder to be in any one of these businesses, right? And I think a lot of these markets, we're in South Jersey. It's still I don't want to say it's a bubble, but it's still very warm here. There's still, the house prices are still very steady. People are buying things and selling them very fast. We got a little bit of a lull in the last 6 months, but it's very, very steady. There's a lot of markets I know around the country that are suffering. They're losing, and equity is dropping. That's not really happening here. And so in here, we're still in a pretty competitive investor market. And there's more investors than there's ever been. Let's face it. I mean, I go to these meetups now, and there's 300 people there, and 85% of them are under 25. Everyone wants to get in the game, and that's exciting. That's good momentum. It's good energy. But the best way, I think, to really get your foot in the door, no pun intended, is to start to build relationships. You could co-wholesale. You could, the JV a flip. You could be the contractor. You could be the bird dog. You can be the, any one of those parts and pieces and get a piece of the deal. And, effectively, one of the things, I know this wasn't the question, but we'll probably lead into this, is helping a lot of these fix and flippers understand the whole world of commercial. Because this is the thing that I was missing out on all these years, right? The same exact principles, teachings, thought processes, systems that go into trying to do a single family are the same things that go into a medical office or a small bay flex space. And so the numbers are just way better. And there's a whole lot less sharks in the sea because there's a lot less people that have the guts to get into commercial. And truthfully, it's not that much different. So what we teach is to bolt that on to your existing fix and flip business. Build the relationships, do the volume, flip the houses, but always keep your eyes and ears open for, hey, the dentist down the street's retiring, or the chiropractor's moving into a different location, or all these different pieces of movement, because again, it's one for one, right? So it's like, it's like we're almost ignoring this whole other ecosystem of real estate that's in our backyard while we're doing the wholesale and the fix and flip.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. But I want to zero back on one thing. From a question point of view, is if you were looking at a brand new someone who's just getting into the fix and flip game,
Yep.
what would you say the one or two most common pitfalls a new fix and flipper has to will suffer from, so maybe that people listening to this could avoid?
Yeah, I thanks for bringing me back to it, because the point I was trying to make is, again, good relationships, right? Where you're going to screw up on your first couple fix and flips is numbers. You're going to buy it too high. You're going to put too much money into it. You're going to over improve. So your relationships are going to save your bacon, right? You're going to have great material suppliers. You're going to have to understand the contractors to call. You're going to have to understand the subcontractors that are, basically I call them retail shops, right? Like your plumbers and HVAC guys that work 90% for the general public are charging 2 or 3 times as much as the investor flipper guys that are doing HVAC, and they're doing volume, but they're doing it at a much better price because they know that they don't have to go out and hunt for clients, right? They work with flippers. They can have 4 or 5 flippers and stay busy all year long. If they're in the retail side, yeah, you can make more money, but now you have to go hunt and chase and do proposals for every single deal. So learn to find the guys that are on the scenes doing the investment stuff. They're doing the flooring for the right price. They're going to do a kitchen for the right price. They're going to be fair to you, because it's very easy to overspend. So I think the numbers is number one thing you got to learn. And the people that are going to help you do that are going to be the boots on the ground people that are already doing it in your backyard.
Numbers makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
People get the numbers wrong, and getting the numbers wrong on a fix and flip can be the difference between making money, losing money, and losing your shirt, essentially. If you get the numbers too wrong.
And the margins are getting super compressed. Let's face it. In a place where there's a lot of competition, the guys that are winning are the guys that have the smallest margins because they do the most volume. And I don't love that model, don't get me wrong, but like the bigger guys in my area are happy to do a flip and make 20 grand because they're trying to do 20 or 30 at a time. But, if you're the little guy, you can't afford to put your life on the line to make $20,000. So you got to get scrappy. You got to figure out, how do I either buy that thing at the better price, build it at a better price, etc. Create more value out of a deal.
And just before we move on to your real estate academy, and I don't know, something that reason now, I must have thought about this before, but I don't know. You brought it up more. Well, because I think it's because most fix and flippers that I meet don't have your background. Like, I think it's such an advantage, having been a professional construction, in military construction, like you have such an advantage. And most flippers I've met don't have that. Maybe they're a little handy, but that's very different.
Yeah.
But most people don't. Now, you teach real estate as well. You teach it. So, and I have to presume that your students aren't all construction experts like you. So, when it comes to getting started, the numbers, yes, I agree. But also there's a level of risk involved, not just with getting your numbers wrong, but on the construction side, looking at something and not realizing maybe that the foundations here are not great, or that the walls are, I saw a house the other day and someone had bolted on a deck and hadn't, oh my God, if you'd seen it, you'd have had a heart attack. I'm an amateur and I looked at it and went, whoa, no, that's not good. But there are risks involved with construction. How do you shepherd people into the the good enough knowledge to not be dangerous?
Yeah. Yeah, again, like it gets back to team and relationships. I mean, you don't have to have the background in construction to know someone who does. In your backyard, it's so easy to find a great, reliable contractor if you know who to ask. And finding those people, again, in your first couple deals, you might have to give it away. You might have to trust the contractor and see his last few jobs if he works for investors and partner with him. How many of these guys would kill to be an equity partner in one of these deals and have profit upside potential inside of, and that happens a lot in our area. Again, some of the biggest flippers I know are partnering with GCs and say, okay, you go build houses for me and I'll keep finding dirt. It's a perfect relationship as long as it works out, right? So, again, find the people that have the knowledge and rely on them. Again, when I said I started out in real estate, I know nothing about real estate. I could build, but I didn't know all the other stuff. So I had to find the local relationships. I had to talk to people. I had to see what was working. I had to take on mentors for the first couple of deals. I had to overpay for the first couple of deals. But again, it gave me the resources and the knowledge, effectively got me into the real estate game.
Makes total sense. Now let's move on to your Legacy Builder Real Estate Academy. So you obviously you've developed a very successful model over the last 20 years in real estate. And what point did you build the kind of coaching model, and at what was the main point of driver for it, and what is the main focus of the program?
Yeah, really, it started very, very organically, which, I'm kind of proud of. When we were flipping lots of houses, it was all the local guys saying, like, how are you doing this? And we became, I should say, the culmination of two things. We became probably one of the biggest short sale teams in the state at the time. You got to realize, 11, 12, 13, 14, before bank owned really became like a big thing. Everything was short sales. The banks just weren't prepared to have REO and to take deals back. So they were just liquidating stuff. So we had direct access to tons of listings that were short sold, and we were helping investors buy these short sales while we were helping the sellers get out of them. And so we had a lot of volume. And so a lot of my original deals came from my own, surfacing sellers that I was prospecting, which became a really, really good lead source, which also became a really unique lead source because a lot of my competitor investors didn't have access to that stuff because they didn't have the real estate license. So we had this culmination of really good, easy off-market leads that had really good margins and access to a lot of our private money capital. So a lot of our competitors were like, how do you do it? And I've always been an abundance mindset guy. I always feel like I don't care, how many of the competition, are doing, millions of dollars a year now because of what they learn from us. I don't mind because it also gives us access, right? And it gives me, the ability to learn from them. So, we would start doing 2-day events in the office. That's how it all started. I would do a 2-day event and I would lay out the whole business. And, I think I would charge $5,000 for the 2 days, and we put 20 people in seats, and it was great. It was a nice time. We go out to dinner. And after I did this 4 or 5 times, people were like, all right, what's next? And I'm like, what do you mean what's next? Come to the next event. And they're like, no, we want more. We want to have access to you. And I'm like, oh, what? So then we eventually created a mastermind. I call it the Inner Circle Family. And that was great. That went for many, many years. And I just kind of got a little bit burnt out of the mastermind kind of space. So we took a departure into self-storage development, and we went hard into the self-storage development world for a while. But that market got really, really tight and really, really saturated very, very fast. And we taught a lot of fix and flippers to go do single or self-storage, and again that we kind of created a really, really big competitor base inside of there. And the REITs just don't like it when they have competition, so they find their ways to justify the numbers, and that's a whole different concept we can get into later on. But slowly what happened was, again, my individual base of all my single family people, I was doing a lot of one-on-one coaching with them and things like that. I know this is a long-winded story, but Now it's what do a lot of them want? A lot of them have experience in fix and flip. A lot of them have been developers. A lot of them have wholesaled hundreds of deals, and they're like, okay, what's the next level that I can bolt onto my business? Well, it's easy. It's what we're doing now. It's medical office, it's small bay industrial, and it's value add commercial real estate that triple net and has really good cash flow, and you could build legacy wealth out of that. It's not so transactional, where the single family world is very, very transactional.
Well, it sounds like you started out in a much more what I would class as traditional coaching program,
Sure.
like a traditional real estate coaching program, and you kind of have graduated into more of a consultancy coaching program, where where it's probably higher value, probably more niche, and you're more solving their. You're not teaching how to suck eggs now. You're not teaching them basics. You're now kind of helping them get to that next level of business rather than getting it started. Is that a fair?
Yeah, it's a fair assessment. Yeah, it's really like I said, it's a bolt on to what they're already doing. I never like to throw a hand grenade in someone's business. If you have a wholesale business and you're making money, far be it for me to tell you you should shut that down and go buy commercial real estate, right? But if you have a wholesale business and you're already doing the marketing and you're already doing the lead gen and you already have salespeople and you already have buyers and sellers, all of those buyers and sellers could very well be in the commercial world already. The guy that's selling his house might also be selling his dentist practice. So now it's just like one extra step or question to ask that could lead you to a whole different level of deal flow and access to other investors.
No, I can see that, and it's also it's a slightly there are a lot of real estate coaches out there now. Like it feels like almost everybody's a real estate coach at this point, and
Yes.
but that market's saturated, and that market's starting to lose a bit of its ground because of whether it's the trust economy, as they say, the trust recession, or whether it's just that there's only so many ways you can skin the cat. It does make sense that you're trying to build that you've built something a little differently, and that idea of adding on, you've already experienced, but here's a way to add on another stream, as opposed to here's a way to either replace or to build for the first time. That addition of a stream as opposed to kind of replacing, I think, is a really interesting angle on it.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad you agree. Yeah, I think, and not even to talk about the tax benefits, right? Like the single family game. I used to laugh about every year I made so much money, and I would go, yeah, my CPA says I keep making all this money, and I have no idea where this money is, because it's so transactional. It's always in the next deal. It's always in the next deal. And then you don't add up to the fact that you do a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen flips at the end of the year. What's your tax bill look like? And what's going to offset that? You could buy one medical office building, do a cost seg, and wipe out your entire tax bill and keep doing what you're doing. Right. And so that level of momentum and cash creation is also a massive piece of, why it makes so much sense for single family guys.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Well, listen, Joe, fantastic. It's really been interesting to hear your story. I really do I like both the sort of construction background and the leg up that gave you in terms of the flipping, but also your approach to the sort of the additive coaching as opposed to kind of base level coaching. I think that's really interesting. So how can people, if someone's listening here saying, well, I'm already successful at this, but that sounds interesting. It sounds interesting to add that extra stream. How can people get in touch with you? How can people benefit from that kind of teaching?
Yeah, I love it. Listen, Jordan, I like to make it super simple. So if you're listening, write this down. My cell phone is 856-244-1036. 856-244-1036. Just call or text me. If you're in the single family world and you're looking at commercial and you're thinking about it, or you have a deal in front of you, you don't know how to underwrite it. I just love having conversations about this stuff. So I'll just let your audience call or text me anytime they want.
Okay, well, that's an easy one. I'll make sure that number is highlighted on so it's easy for people to call. And fantastic. Well, listen, Joe, I appreciate you so much coming on. I think it's fantastic. I like the additive approach, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of you in the future, because I think that's a really cool approach.
I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another amazing episode of That Real Estate Tech Guy. Head over to thatrealeestatetechguy.com to check out all episodes and get special discounts on tons of awesome real estate technology platforms.